Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the January 24, 23 Finance and Governors Committee to order. And Madam Clerk, roll call and posting the agenda.
Member Tehran,
Here.
Chair Zaragoza,
Here.
we have a quorum. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the City Hall Bulletin Board on January 17th, 2023. Thank you.
Okay, and we're going to, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, but we'd like to take a moment of silence for all the victims of the mass incidents and murders across the United States, which is really terrible. We'll take a moment of silence for that. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Our next item is, Madam Clerk, any public comments or public speakers for items not on the agenda?
Chair Zaragoza, there's no public speakers virtually or in person.
Okay, thank you. Then, so we'll go to item C. This is a consent item, City Clerk Department approval of the minutes. The recommendation is that the Finance and Governance Committee approve the minutes of the Jan 10, 2023 regular meeting as presented. Any concerns?
No, Mayor, I'd like to move to approve the minutes as presented.
Okay, and I'll second it. Roll call. And we have Councilwoman Basua is with us.
Mayor, for the record, Councilmember Basua has joined the meeting at 5:06 p.m.
And we're just looking at the minutes. Any concerns with the minutes at all? Yeah. Okay, we got a first and a second. First by Tehran, second by Zaragoza. Roll call.
Please vote.
Oh, we can use it. Okay, good. Okay. Okay.
Thank you. Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you. Our next item is item D, and this is Public Works. Subject, carryover of encumbered funds from fiscal year 2021-22 and amend the budget appropriation for Public Works for fiscal year 2023. And the recommendation is that Finance and Governance Committee recommend to the City Council approval of number one, the carryover of encumbered funds from fiscal year 2021 to fiscal 2023 from the available balance of A, $957,184 to the General Fund 101, and B, $232,001 to the Wastewater Fund 611, and C, $115,181 to the Environmental Resources Fund 631 due to supply chain delays, and to the fiscal year 22-23 budget appropriation from the available fund balance in the amount of $115,811 to the Special District Fund 120, and the new work and budget appropriation transfer of $7,300 from the General Fund 101 to the Special District Fund 120 as a general benefit contributions for applicable domestic districts. And three, fiscal year 22-23 budget unappropriation in the amount of $5,175,000 from the Water Fund Bond Fund 609. And this item is not subject to the California Environmental Act. And again, this was required under Measure M, a pre-recorded presentation, and we do have our Public Works Director Michael Wolf, for any questions from council members. I have a couple of questions. Okay, Michael, you know, I think that, as I mentioned here in my remarks, that the carryover covers funds from fiscal year 2020-22 to amend the budget to the Public Works fiscal year 2023 is because of we have some street equipment delays, and it was also due to the chain delays, which is really not good. But so some of those capital items were delayed to that passed the June 2022 fiscal year, And therefore, we need to transfer those funds. And also, of course, there's some other non-capital items that were ordered also that didn't make it because of that. And also you have the special district LMD funding that I mentioned before, the 115,811. And then also the transfer of the 7,300 to the special districts, so, any additional questions, or you want to share any additional information on that?
I can share some additional information, but if you have specific questions, I can answer those as well.
Any additional questions? Councilman Turan?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Wolf, for the presentation. As a reminder for the public, Measure M prohibits the public from seeing the presentation live. So I just want to get into my only question, which is the pothole patch trucks that were appropriated. Can you just talk a little bit about those? I know potholes are kind of a hot subject, and I would like for the public record folks to hear that information on that, please.
Yeah, thank you. And just going back to what the mayor said, obviously we're being caught up by the supply chain issues. So these monies were budgeted in the previous fiscal year. The parts and or equipment were ordered, have not been delivered. So in order for us to have that budget available the next fiscal year, the request is to carry over the money. So those two specific items, or the one specific item, but two pieces of equipment, are what we call patch trucks or asphalt patch trucks. I think that was the question. So these are specialized pieces of equipment that are designed and have the ability to house completely what is necessary to fix a pothole. And so it is actually a very efficient way of doing it. It has typically they have a heater or hopper to keep the asphalt warm. They have all the pieces of equipment. It's all laid out in a certain sequence of events so that it can be operated by a couple of folks, a couple of crew members, in addition to traffic control, depending on where you are in the city. But these are much more efficient than potentially bringing multiple pieces of equipment out, whether that's a dump truck with asphalt and then another piece of equipment that has the tamper and or the tack, the asphalt tack. So this is all self-contained unit, constructed and put together so that that sequence of events can happen in a much faster and more efficient manner. And plus, keeping the asphalt warm is a very important part of that. So.
Yes, thank you very much for the information.
And additionally, I'm sure if the $5 million from the bonds, we didn't get to use those dollars. Is that what it is? Is that what happened there?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So that actually is more of a cleanup item than anything else. And so as we estimate our capital projects far in advance of actually approving the budget, we look at projects that we may be able to do in those fiscal years, and we identify certain funding sources for those projects. And one of the funding sources for these projects were a bond. So when we take a look at our workload as we get into the fiscal year, and we say, hey, these are projects that either aren't prioritized just based on our workload, or there are reasons why those projects aren't moving forward as quickly as other ones. And so therefore, these are cleanup items where these two projects didn't move forward as anticipated. And so we want to take off that bond revenue because those projects aren't getting delivered this fiscal year. It doesn't mean those projects aren't going to be constructed. Doesn't mean those projects aren't going to need bond funding. It just, in this fiscal year, we want to take that off.
That kind of balances the budget then, kind of?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The other thing too, we're also then transferring some dollars to the LMDs. From the general fund.
Yes, sir. So this is as you can imagine, again, our budgets are written kind of far in advance, and we're estimating what we may be spending over a 12-month period, and we're estimating services that we may do over those 12-month periods. There's things that come up in those 12 months that we want to make sure we address, and we may not have budget for them. 6, 8, 12 months ago, we may not have anticipated needing to budget them. So these are things like a broken fence or a repair that's come up to our attention, or at least brought to our attention in the middle of a fiscal year. And so we want to address those specifically if they have safety issues for sure. And so this request is to appropriate funding from those special districts to their operating fund so that we can then make those repairs during the fiscal year. And now each one of the special districts, each one of the LMDs has a general benefit component. So that's why you see a percentage of the general fund in addition to the special assessment fund.
Thank you. Go ahead. Councilman Tran.
Thank you. Just as a quick follow-up to that, this percentage of general benefit that the general fund would be responsible for, that is all tracked, and we're sticking strictly to that amount that we would be responsible for, correct?
Yeah, in fact, it's actually published in our engineer's report. It's available online. That's a report that gets approved through the council in a public meeting. So yeah, it's all available in that combined engineer's report.
Great, thank you very much. I want to make sure that what's owed to the special districts for this type of work that we're on the hook for, that has been committed to them, is stuck to, and that's what we're sticking to.
And it goes
Otherwise, they have their budgets that they have allowed for themselves. So thank you.
Goes back to them. Councilman Basu. Thank you. Okay, what's the pleasure of the board? Move.
Chair
And
Zaragoza,
public comment.
Ed, I was going to ask you that.
we have no public speakers virtually or in person.
Thank you so much. Okay, we got a first by Councilman Basua,
I'll second.
second by Turan. Councilman Turan, please vote.
Motion passes 3-0.
And Mr. Will, by the way, too, really good work, your people do excellent work, as I mentioned before, it's just great to see all the employees working out there, and with that equipment, it's much needed, so I just want to thank you and our staff again, like always, so.
Thank you, sir. I'll pass it on to the staff.
And also, when we had this big rains, your people were out there cleaning up and palm fronds and trees and et cetera, But I just want to thank you for that, for the good work, and our administration that we have. Thank you for that.
Yeah, the great staff is doing all that work.
Thank you. Okay, our next item is items for future agendas. No? Okay, so we are adjourned. Thank you. And we'll be back for a special meeting at 6 o'clock. Thank you.